Japan is the leading producer of love simulation games for women called otome games. The goal of these games is to develop a romantic relationship between the female protagonist and one selected character. To get a high score in the game, you have to make choices. For example, when a male character is getting sexually aggressive, should you protest or remain passive? And if the character says he loves you, how should you react? Should you take his hand, say thank you, or ask if it's true? Depending on your choices, the relationship can lead to failure, you will stay alone, or to success, you will spark love. However, if you want to spark love, it's not enough to please the male character and to be compliant. You also have to get clothes, accessories, hairstyles, and cosmetic products. The outcome of the game depends not only on your ability to communicate with a character, but also on your ability to take care of your appearance. It means you have to play a role, the role of a supposedly average girl interested in beauty. In order to get high scores and attract the male character, you are also expected to make shopping, to dress up your avatar, and to make this avatar look like a princess. It may seem terribly conservative that in such games the wardrobe of a woman is more valued than her library. As a matter of fact, most of the researchers working on otome games argue that such games produce heteronormative perspectives on how women should enact femininity. As Tina Richards puts it, these games are strongly based on patriarchal values. But even if it's true, such an analysis cannot account for the whole reality of the phenomenon. You cannot understand a game without studying the way it is played. In 1984, Janice Radway, pioneer researcher in Romance literature, already stressed that cultural productions cannot be considered only from the internal narrative structure, but also through an ethnographic investigation from the practices and interpretations of their readers. When you make fieldwork inquiries on otome games, it appears that such products foster ambivalent uses and purposes. It also appears that the consumers of otome games very often do not identify to an average girl interested in beauty. They do not consider that attracting a man in order to marry is a priority. As they repeatedly say it, the game is not reality. In the game, you just pretend to be someone you are not. It's a fake identity. Even if the game brings about a very traditional vision of gender, it can be used as a tool to refuse the social role prescribed to women. In other words, playing a stereotyped girly role can be a way to escape from gender stereotypes. A pretty doll-like avatar can be used as a resource to fight against the norms. This is what I would like to demonstrate, addressing the two different aspects of otome games. First, I will examine the game dimension, then I will tackle the play dimension. The most popular otome games are those designed for mobile. These games are usually referred to as Renai app, love app. When you register your name in the game, you become part of a community of players with whom you can communicate, exchange gifts, but also enter into competition. Your name appears in a ranking system along with a profile that the other players can see. Your profile usually goes with an avatar which is a standard basic avatar supplied with a standard basic outfit. You can customize the avatar and select new clothes or new faces within a choice of available eyes or hairstyles. You can also personalize your private space and purchase a loft in New York or the furniture of a dreamy bedroom. In fact, the game leaves you no choice. To increase your score, you have to gain personal prestige and make your in-game image more visible. The female player is constantly required to level up different parameters such as seduction, miryoku, appeal, ninki, elegance, kihin or charm, karen. The otome game ranking is based on a mechanic that makes it necessary to single out your avatar. But this dynamic of competition is based only on showing off. The modes of self-presentation are limited to ornaments, apartments, and body image. It's all about appearance and nothing else but appearance, which may seem terribly sexist since it stems from the notion that women's value lies only in their looks. In heteronormative cultures, women have to be lovely and to wear nice clothes in order to seduce a man and create a family. It can be surprising that female players may enjoy such games, which deny them the possibility to be attractive with a smart brain or with a strong power. But again, there is no alternative. To date a male character, you have to complete what is called an avatar mission. The goal of an avatar mission is to buy expensive dresses, makeup, bags, and jewelry. To fuel the competitive spirit, there are sometimes 2 different rankings, so that players have to fight twice as much. The first 3 best players, standing up on a podium, are even entitled to a crown. They are the beauty queens. To increase pressure on players, otome games also add temporary rankings. Every 2 weeks, romantic short stories are launched under the name of events, ibento. During these events, players can raise their statistics and get special clothes or accessories as a reward. Because such clothes and accessories are in limited edition, available only for 2 weeks, players desperately try to increase their charm to get these items. The events could be compared to battlegrounds, where a special range of fashion represent victory. The most dedicated players can be recognized as the one who wear rare and extravagant garments, similar to trophies. Some of these garments are worth a huge amount of money. Significantly, these expensive garments are called avatar, as if digital dress was the equivalent of a digital person. There seemed to be no difference between the two. It's the same word, avatar. From this, it would be easy to conclude that otome games should be considered fundamentally conservative, and that playing such games should be forbidden to girls, since they teach them to rely on their looks and not on their achievements. It seems indeed obvious that these games disseminate and reinforce the worst stereotypes. The narrative and game mechanics induce female players to think that the only way to get value is to please a male character, and that the only way to please him is to make themselves beautiful. But, as I stated before, the analysis of otome games phenomenon cannot be carried out on the sole basis of the product itself. it's not enough to study the game. You also have to study the play, that is, the practice, the activity. When you start studying the play, it turns out that the otome game phenomenon developed in a very specific social context. In Japan, more and more people are now remaining single. The marriage rate is falling down. This trend dates back to the 80s, but suddenly accelerated in the 90s, just when otome games appeared. In 1994, when Angélique, the first otome game, was released, Japan's economic bubble had just imploded. In 2002, when Tokimeki Memorial Girls' Side, the famous otome game from Konami, was released, the marriage rates were dropping down due to the economic downturn. In 2005, the number of single-person households started being superior to the number of family households. In 2006, according to Famitsu, otome games account for nearly half of the most popular love games in Japan. You cannot understand otome game phenomenon if you don't study it against the backdrop of this single boom, because until recently, otome games were mainly targeted towards young women, most of them being single, most of them choosing to live alone. And here is where I would like to come up with a question. Why do millions of female players in Japan indulge in romance, while at the same time the majority of these players say they don't need a husband? Could it be that the content of otome games is contradictory with the values of the players? And if so, why do players enjoy the narrative identity of a stereotyped woman? This will be the second part of my lecture. As I would like to demonstrate, otome games appear to be the symptom of a crisis, the matrimonial system crisis. To support my demonstration, I would first like to quote a few players. Why are they spending so much money on digital clothes instead of real clothes? But first of all, what is a real-life profile of these women compared to their in-game profile? To start with, otome games players refer to themselves as dream girls, yume joshi. Yume joshi is a term used for girls who enjoy dating their favorite characters in their head. They consider that these characters are their boyfriends or their husbands. The expression yume joshi means that these girls have the ability to project themselves in what they call a parallel world, the one in which their lover lives. Most of them start playing at a young age, around 13 years old. But otome games companies mainly target yume joshi between 17 and 47 years old. 3/4 of the yume joshi are single. This is due, of course, to the fact that a lot of them are too young, but it's not the only reason. Half of the older yume joshi, those who are in the working age, are married women dissatisfied with their lives. The other half are independent women who achieve economic autonomy and who feel insecure about marrying because it means they will have to rely on their husband's income. The profile of female players is wide. Teens, employees, students, housewives. What they have in common is that they claim to be otaku. From an economic perspective, otaku are what the Nomura Research Institute stamped enthusiastic consumers who dedicate much of their disposable income to their hobby. The yumejoshi are, in fact, quite proud to spend money on games which, as they tell it, make them dream, bring them hope, and allow them to live another life in another dimension. Their expenses related to otome games are sometimes huge. Chika, for example, 29 years old, single, living in Tokyo, says that her game budget is around 30,000 yen per month. But it happens that during an event, a character's birthday for example, she spends up to 70,000 yen. Other players invest almost all of their salary. A big part of their game budget goes to improving their look, the look of their avatar. It may seem strange that these women buy outfits that will only be seen by the other players in the game. When I ask the question, what is the point? My informants all reply in a similar way. If I did not spend money, the company that produces the game would not make any profit out of it and would find it useless to provide new events and new episodes. The game would be stopped and my beloved character would die. For some players, it's a matter of life and death. When they dress up their avatar, it's not so much as they explain it to enjoy being a princess in a fantasy world, even if the fantasy is exciting, of course. It is rather to show how deeply they love the character. The more they pour money in the game, the more extravagant and daring outfit they get, the more their romantic commitment becomes visible. These outfits have the value of gifts. Yumejoshi identify these gifts as ofuse, with a word borrowed to the Shinto lexicon. Ofuse refers to the money given to priests in exchange for a ceremony. Ofuse is not a payment, but an offering to express gratitude. By using the word ofuse, yumejoshi organize their lavish and somehow excessive spendings as part of an economy of symbolic exchanges. When they buy digital clothes and accessories, they incorporate the concept of sacrifice to their narrative identity. In the community of the otome game players, each yumejoshi is expected to contribute with a sacrifice. The bigger sacrifice, the most prestigious. Sacrifice means that the yumejoshi are women who feel ready to abandon their material well-being in the name of pure love. As opposed to real love, pure love is something that you share with others. Digital characters, like pop idols, cannot date anybody, so they belong to everybody. All the yumejoshi can compete for the love of a character and dream that he becomes a personal possession, while knowing it's impossible. You will never be able to live with him. Not really. Pure love is giving up all hopes concerning your love interest. Pure love is also asking nothing in return for your sacrifice, but a trace, a voice recording, some sweet words, an image, something nearly immaterial, something that circulates and that you cannot really grab. Because the love relationship with an otome game character is based on renouncement, it makes yumejoshi very close to the spiritual world. But I would like to push further the analysis. It's not enough to state that the narrative identity in the otome game community revolves around a strategy aimed at making a sacrifice out of what is usually seen as a meaningless spending. In a social environment where otaku are often represented as overtly breaking the conventional rules of Japanese society, yumejoshi are seen as egoistic, spoiled, and sometimes even sick or mentally disturbed. They spend time and money on a digital lover rather than trying to get a real husband. They should rather create a family. This is what people usually think. Why do they make such a waste of their life? My personal interpretation is that yumejoshi more or less openly challenge the social norms by crafting a narrative identity which seemingly comply with the norm while making it fun or rather enjoyable. This is why otome games mirror and mimic social rules of courtship. Such games operate as a kind of stratagem, a sham, or a trompe-l'œil. When you play an otome game, you act as if you were only interested in attracting a man, but it's not for real, and the very fact that it's not for real makes it offensive. It is frowned upon to become attached to creatures that do not exist for real, to spend money on them, and to give them all your energy, savings and time. Yumejoshi are very well aware of it. Until recently, playing otome games was something inappropriate in public. The yumejoshi had to hide in order to avoid negative evaluation. Even if otome games are becoming more and more popular, it is perceived as a wrongdoing. For that reason, when women define themselves as yumejoshi, they define themselves against the dominant values. The very fact that the yumejoshi translate a social duty into a kind of entertainment is combative, as Janice Radway puts it in her analysis of romance literature. It is combative in the sense that it enables them to refuse the other-directed social role prescribed for them. In picking up a game, they refuse temporarily their family otherwise constant demand, go get a husband, and they act deliberately to do something for their own private pleasure. Even if at first view playing otome game is a way to mold yourself in the image of femininity prescribed by the dominant culture, this activity is in itself highly transgressive. It's all the more transgressive as most yumejoshi are part of Japan's growing population of singles. Despite the fact that there are a majority in the cities, people living alone are a minority in the Japanese society, and as such, they have to negotiate their identity. It appears that otome games can be used as a toolkit for identity negotiation, because they make it possible to craft yourself, both in accordance and in discordance with what society expects you to do as a woman. In Japanese society, a woman is expected to find a husband and stop her professional career to raise children. The problem is that with the economic downturn, the salaries have dropped down, and it puts the male breadwinner type of family out of reach for a significant portion of the population. Women cannot find a partner who earns enough money. It is necessary for a man to earn at least 4 million yen a year to raise a family. Only 15% of Japanese men in their 20s can get this amount of money. Marriage prospects are declining also for women because they are afraid of losing their job, their security, and their independence if they marry and become mother. As a result, there is a huge discrepancy between what Japanese women should do and what they can achieve. They should find a husband, but it's impossible. And here is why otome games are so popular right now. Because it's all about the inadequacy between dream and reality. Here is also why otome games replicate the social norms, because such norms are impossible to comply with. As a consequence, playing otome game can be an ironical way to construct your identity within the limits of cultural constraints that are embedded in the game, but also within the limits of reality itself. In the reality, romance is elusive. In the reality, even if you want it, and even if you don't want it, it's all the same. You will not marry. You will not have children. You will die alone. In the reality, all you can do is just dream about love. Now, I would like to conclude. Otome games are often accused of teaching women how to behave in accordance with gender stereotypes. It's true. But it's also true that playing otome game is a way to escape from what is expected from women. When you identify yourself to the marginalized community of Yume Joshi, and when you dedicate your life to a male character, you are not exactly someone who focuses on finding a husband. It's also true that playing otome game is a way to demonstrate that what women are required to do, marry, become mother, is just a pure dream, since it's nearly impossible for them to find for real the appropriate husband. And it is also true that otome games can be used to express disagreement with the Japanese system by casting a doubt on the marriage model. The narrative identity of Yume Joshi is that of women who don't need to marry a real man to fulfill their life. They find it exciting to marry a male character. This is at least how they face exclusion, by crafting the collective identity of women who enjoy themselves. This makes Yume Joshi identity performance perfectly ambivalent. This performance is both compliant and opposed to the dominant culture. Thanks to otome games, the female players can play doll with their avatar, they can wear crazy outfits and waste their wages for pure love. Because they will die alone? Because they have no future? Why should they save money? Yume Joshi build who they are on this heroic self-holocaust. Thank you very much.